All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first MeZooMin episode in a while. I say our first plain MeZooMin, just us, just you three old rabbis. We haven't had a chance to chat and to see what's going on and to check in with people, so we're excited. We have a lot on our minds, and we have a lot of questions on our minds. But for now, let's first find out how Rabbi Wahlberg is doing. Rabbi Wahlberg, where'd you go? You were on my screen. Now I don't see you. There you are.
Baruch Hashem, I'm doing fine. I mean, the shul still deposits my paycheck, and I don't have as much chance to spend it as I used to. But I'm really finding this time extremely, extremely productive. Reading, studying. I just started a new book on the virus called Apollo's Arrow, which is fascinating. And when what we call the winter break comes, I'm writing a book. So
a book?
Yeah. We're hoping anybody who buys the book will get a free copy of Pulpit Power.
Are you going to tell us what the book's going to be about, or do you know what the book's going to be about, or you're just going to write?
Yes, what we can really learn from the rich and famous. I have statements that famous people have made, and I analyze them and what we can learn from them. The one that I wrote some while ago, Jay Leno, I quote, is after his contract negotiation, if you can't live, did you get a raise? They asked him. He says, if you can't live on what I'm making now, then it doesn't pay to live. He was making $15 million a year.
I want to share with you.
That was something worth discussing. And I have stuff that I've pulled out from sermons, some original things, but it should be interesting. And I feel that
was that what you were when you were interviewing me and asking me questions. Was that for that book? I didn't know the rich and famous. I'm touched. Thank you.
You're getting there, Chai. You're getting there. Stick around.
Which do you think I'm going to be first, famous or rich?
Well, Yogev is already on the front page of the Jewish Times. I mean, how did he pull that off? I was here like 25 years before that ever happened.
That's because he knows how to use the filters on.
I had my 24 hours of fame. It was nice. And now I'm trying to renew that with all these new Zoom filters. You like them?
Well, I had something nicer tonight, Eli.
Yeah, what did you have, Rob?
A steak.
Don't get me started. No.
Okay. Fair enough.
Rabbi Yogev had a steak as well. He also had a steak.
Yes.
I had some good broccoli tonight. It was so good.
All right.
That's a good way to buy into everyone's vegan stereotype.
Yeah.
I'm trying to actually remove this filter. All right, here we go. Good. Oh, it's good to see everybody. Good evening. Shalom.
All right, so what's that?
I have some good questions for you, rabbis, from a few from some of our congregants, but I have my own questions that I want to ask you too. And I know you have a few, so we're going to have a lot of fun tonight, I think.
Yeah, so starting now, if anyone wants to put any questions into the chat, you can do that. What we're going to try to do is we are each going to ask the rabbis. So I'm going to ask Rabbi Wahlberg and Rabbi Yogev a question I want to ask them. They're going to ask me. We're going to ask each other. Meanwhile, along the way, you're welcome to put any questions into the chat that you have. And we're going to try to keep our eye on the chat as well as we can as we go along, and to answer those questions as they come in. even if we are like mid-sentence of something else, we're going to try. We don't know how it will go. It might come too fast, or sometimes when you tell people that you can post questions, nobody posts any questions. So we might not have any questions at all. But we also are commemorating or thinking about highlighting this evening the work of FIDF, and particularly the lone soldiers. And we'll be getting to that a little bit later in the program as well. So first, let's open up with a question, like we always do open up with a question. Our trivia question for this evening, Rabbi Yoga.
All right, here we go. Here's our trivia question for the evening. Abraham's offspring is described by Hashem as all of the following, aside from, we have sand, chol, earth, adamah, stars, kochavim, and dust, afar. So this appears in our parsha and in a later parsha, but one of them is incorrect. You tell us which one.
Awesome. We like that background on there too. That looked very professional.
I'm trying to keep up with our new graphic designer, amazing graphic designer.
See that, Rabbi Wahlberg, while you're writing books. Rabbi Yoga's got cool.
Some people know how to get ahead in the rabbinate. No question.
All right. We already have our first question came in. The question was, and I said it was, so the question came in from Deborah Mitnick, who said, what do you think about the rabbis who are telling their congregants how to vote? So it happens to be, we're gonna get to that question. I think Rabbi Wahlberg may have a question like that. Of course, Deborah, it depends on who they're telling to vote. So who they're telling you to vote for.
It's another great question. Where will Reform and Conservative Judaism be in 20 years?
On Zoom.
All right, let's try to answer that second one, because I know we're going to answer the first one. Where will they be? Rabbi Wahlberg, I think you might not have been kidding about that.
I don't know what to say, honestly, because, I have such very strong and positive feelings about conservative and Reform Jews. I mean, these are people who are identifying with their Judaism and practicing their Judaism in the way they come to understand it and believe in it. But the numbers keep going down and down and down as more younger Jews seem to be moving away from their heritage and from their roots. We are going to have Rabbi Shmuley Boteach next week, who Rabbi Posner is going to be dialoguing with, which is going to discuss this very issue of what's the future. The bottom line is Orthodox keeps growing, if for no other reason than a high birth rate, and conservative and Reform Judaism keeps diminishing. More and more synagogues are merging or even clothing. So for the future, the Zoom might present an alternative, but I don't believe in Zoomyism. I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, you probably really have to, or you really have to ask a Reform or conservative rabbi that question.
Yes.
I mean, for many years, and this, I remember we were saying this when I was in rabbinical school. So, and I remember being at the beginning of that. So it does go back like, wow, like maybe almost 15 years. They were saying, the word on the street was orthodoxy is sort of, moving to the right, and Reform is moving to the left, and conservative is disappearing. That's what they were saying. But they're still sort of saying some of those same things today. So I don't know. I don't know if it was true then, and I don't know if it's true now. I do know that all of the streams, all the denominations, in my opinion, I might be partial as a rabbi, but have done an incredible job throughout this pandemic of, in their own ways and in their own what's appropriate for them and for their congregations, like reaching out and being relevant for them. I've really seen that. I know we saw it locally in the Baltimore shuls here, and I think it's been the case across the United States. All right, we have.
I'm in on that. I think that there's.
Is that a question?
It's another question. I'll suggest this one real quickly. I think there's two groups also to look out for.
This question, by the way, sorry, this question was from Jason, but I don't know Jason, whose last name is iPhone. So that's who it was from. I don't know. the last name. Rabbi Yogev.
Yeah, so we're answering the question, where will Reform and conservative Judaism be in 20 years? So there's two groups to also look out for. People don't talk about Chabad as kind of like its own denomination. But I once heard the rabbi of Chabad of, I think it was Harvard, and he said that we're not like our own denomination. We're kind of like a pan-denomination, and they keep growing in a positive way. And they're kind of taking in people from different parts, and they keep expanding. So that's something to look out for going forward. Also, what the Pew Research talked about before is like the rise of the nuns, not the N-U-N-S, N-O-N-E-S.
Yes.
The non-affiliated. That's the biggest concern for all of us, is people are just not affiliated, and that keeps growing. So that threatens all religions right now. So
Absolutely. By the way, now we have confirmation that question was from Jason Rubenstein. Thank you. If we had known it was from Jason Rubenstein, we would have answered the question completely differently. But we didn't know. The non, it's very true. Right. It's very true. Those nons. There was a time, or Wilbur, you can speak to this probably better. What's that?
I'm sorry. What's that?
What's that?
Rabbi Wilbur, you can probably speak to this better. But there was a time where there were like threats. Basically, denominations were kind of fighting with each other. Like, you were afraid. Orthodoxy was afraid of conservative before. Those denominations have gotten together a lot because it's the nons that the people are most concerned about. And you sort of see your rabbi as a partner.
That hasn't brought the Orthodox and non-Orthodox closer together. The Orthodox still practice a form of isolation Judaism. Aside from synagogues such as ours, there's no contact for all practical purposes between Orthodox congregations and Orthodox rabbis with non-Orthodox congregations and rabbis. We're not working together. We never did. We have this big problem with intermarriage, but we never had NCSY and NIFTY and USY have all of their Jewish kids get together. We each stuck to ourselves, and now we're stuck with a lot of nuns. A lot of nuns.
I don't see that trend slowing down. I mean, I think that's what affected the Reform Conservative in the last 20 years. I see that continuing, sadly.
Yeah. All right. We can stay on this topic for a long time, surely, but we want to move along and just check. Okay. So, Rabbi Wahlberg, do you want to start asking the question? By the way, don't forget to put in your answers for the trivia.
Yeah.
You have a question for us, Rabbi Wahlberg?
Yeah, I was going to ask you and Rabbi Yogev who you're voting for, but then I realized I'm not sure if the two of you are old enough to vote. So yeah, who are you voting for? The truth of the matter is, we discuss a lot of things together. We really don't discuss politics together. I was thinking about that today. I really don't know who you would be voting for. Rabbi Yogev is voting for someone from the Green Party, I'm assuming.
We can tell you who our parents are voting for, if that, not necessarily, if we're not old enough, we can find out from them. Rabbi Yogev, you want to get this one started?
I actually really don't, but I will.
Well, the issue is I'm catching up on the last debate now. And when I get to the end of it, then I'll definitely know the answer. Because the debate really helped decide who
I have not watched 1 minute of any debate.
Really?
Not 1 minute of any debate.
Interesting. I would have thought that you would want to just...
You're getting some applause in the crowd.
I mean, I don't have to tell you how much I read about politics.
That's why I'm surprised you didn't watch it. I don't know. I have like this yetzer to watch it. It's interesting. Just like, yeah.
It might be because I have such strong feelings about one of the candidates that I just don't want to put myself through it.
Well, this is what I'll tell you. I will tell you. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you who I voted for. But I will tell you that I didn't vote for Donald Trump. And I will also tell you that I didn't vote for Joe Biden. And I will tell you that I think the governor had the right idea. 4 years ago, I did a write-in. I'm fortunate enough, or unfortunate, depends on how you look at it. Fortunate enough in these elections, my opinion, to live in a place where our vote doesn't matter. Because then I would feel more pressure. Like you gotta choose between the lesser of two not good choices. But because we're in a situation where our vote really doesn't matter that much, I got to get out of it, because I remember feeling last time around that my conscience wouldn't be able to handle having voted for either of the choices at that time. And I kind of feel the same way this time around. So I'm not saying that I did a write-in for Reagan, but I like the governor's idea in this regard. We're gonna talk a little bit more.
My Parsha preview tomorrow, it tells you why your vote counts.
It's too, you know what? It's too bad that it's too bad that I didn't see that sooner.
Had I known, I would have sent you.
So I already voted like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'm not gonna say.
It would be interesting how many people, by a show of hands or whatever, have already voted.
Wow, a lot of people here. Wow.
1 second, Helen Gordon, you intend to stand online Tuesday?
Where is that?
Address yet.
What's that? What'd you say,
Everybody,
Helen?
our guest of the week, Helen Gordon.
I didn't get a ballot mailed to my new address yet. I'm still waiting.
Oh, you're still waiting. All right. Yeah.
Big
I will-
joke.
You'll be one of the early ones to vote for Nikki Haley in 2024.
I'm hoping.
All right, but it's amazing how many people across America have already voted.
Rabbi Yogev, what's your answer?
So I have I personally feel, and that's why I'm not going to share who I'm voting for. I have strong feelings about, and maybe the other rabbis here disagree. Maybe it's just because I'm new to the rabbinate and I want to keep my job as a rabbi in our shul. But I have strong feelings about like disconnecting between politics and the pulpit. I've been very careful not to state where I stand. Maybe I've highlighted certain values that are highlighted in different groups, but I personally, like when I was in yeshiva and through my years, when I came to shul, I follow politics. I listen to podcasts. I follow avidly, but like when I come to shul, I just want to break from that. I want to like hear Torah. I want to daven. So it's like that's my feeling in terms of what I try to relay to people and deliver. Is kind of give them some like a Torah idea without try to keep it disconnected. Also, like everything's so divisive right now. I don't want to separate people any more than they are right now. I feel like we have to work really hard to unite and connect and put some of our differences aside. There's like, we're in a really extreme state right now. So that's why, for those two reasons. And there's a third reason why I kind of stay away from it is that I'm not an expert in politics. I haven't been hired to like offer my opinion on politics. Like I don't tell doctors or others what I think as a thought leader of a community, like what they should do in terms of political. I've been hired to like teach people Torah. And so that's what I'm doing. If I was an expert in that area and I was a pundit, I think I would feel more comfortable sharing my opinion. So I'm just not an expert in that also.
Rabbi Yogev, let me correct you. We hired you because your previous experience was as a rabbi in prison. And we felt that really made you qualified for Beth Tefillah, that there was a natural connection over there. Let me just say, you see, where I disagree is on what is defined as politics. Immigration to me is not politics. Lying is not politics. Civil rights is not politics. All of these issues are, for me, a religious issue. Our religion has something to say about all of these issues. And always wanted, as a rabbi, why should you be studying a Torah that's 3,300 years old if it doesn't speak to you today about the issues that you're dealing with? And I've always wanted to do that. I've tried to always stick to the issues rather than the specific personalities, but that's not always been possible. But I do agree with you. I think most people in the congregation know how I feel. And in recent weeks, or even more, nobody would have noticed, but in my Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur sermon, there was not one political word. I've said what I had to say, and it's such a divisive issue that I don't want to add any more to a division within our own congregation.
They also made us cut down the sermons by like 30 minutes. But
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
I
where I
thought-
took out the political things.
I thought you wouldn't notice I took out all of your political pieces from your sermon. It's like you noticed.
Listen, I've been a political, when I was 16 years old, I had rheumatic fever and I had to stay home that summer. So I was in bed really that entire summer. And that was 1960, the summer of JFK. And I became enamored with politics. And my mother told my brother to buy a, what do they call it? A record player and records for me. So he bought me opera records because he liked opera. So, but that I learned that then, and I learned politics then, and I've been hooked on it ever since because I think it's life we're talking about. This month's Atlantic magazine, the election that could break America. And I'm not going to have something to say about it.
So we want to first of all remind people that as you're putting comments into the chat, please let's keep it appropriate, especially on this topic. And listen, this is a very, very hot topic. There's a big discussion today on a Facebook by a professor, a young professor, Rabbi Shlomo Zuckier, who oftentimes comments on things that are going on in the modern Orthodox Jewish world. And he commented that a couple of rabbis of big congregations, this is not ours, no one in Baltimore, we have made comments about this recently about rabbis and politics and should they discuss and shouldn't they discuss. This exact conversation that we're having is going on all over the place. Look, I certainly agree, Rabbi Wahlberg, in terms of, a rabbi should have something to say. When you say, when you talk about immigration, or you talk about healthcare, and you say these aren't religious issues, they are religious issues. Where I think I disagree, or maybe you will agree with what I have to say here, or I would take it in a little bit of a different direction, is that it's not clear these are religious issues. They're religious values. It's not clear to me necessarily which party has the best answers for getting to the best place with any of this. And that's where I think it kind of gets murky. Like we're a candidate we're someone to say something like, I don't think we should help people who are suffering. Tough luck, let them suffer. That's one thing. As opposed to someone saying, well, your plan for healthcare for everyone is unrealistic or is unfeasible, or where's the money going to come from? You're going to take it from some place else or for some other place, right? So those are issues where I'm closer to Rabbi Yogev on this in terms of like, I don't know any better, unless I'm an expert on politics, which I'm not. And by the way, I, before coming here, wasn't interested in politics at all. I made myself get interested, and I'm still not all that interested. Politics doesn't do my soul any good. I don't really like to get into it. I do find it, especially these days, incredibly, incredibly divisive.
What I'm
It's
really
important to
interested
be
in right now is
to
what
be
Rita
knowledgeable.
Freeman is eating. She looks like she is having such a good time. It looks like it must be delicious. Rita, enjoy yourself. It's good to see you.
All
We
right.
may continue.
All right, well then,
All right,
well, that's,
That's good.
no, that solves the question. That solves the question. All
That's
right, we
it.
could stay on this topic forever. Let's, do we have any other questions come in?
I have,
Talk about issues.
I was at one question that was asked via email is the number 40. Why is the number 40 so important in Judaism? Kim Tuvin asked this. You know, Moshe was on Mount Sinai for 40 days. 40 is all over the place. So why is 40 so important? What do you rabbis think?
40 is renewal. 40 is rebirth. After 40 days in the ark, the world was recreated, so to speak. After 40 days atop Mount Sinai, it was a new world when we received the Torah. After 40 years of being in the wilderness, the Jews entered the promised land. Rabbi Akiva became a rabbi, studied Torah when he turned 40. 40 always seems to be a number that's associated with rebirth and renewal. And you know what else is 40? Quarantine. The word quarantine comes from the Latin, the Greek, or maybe the Hebrew, I'm not even sure, for 40, because if you're separated for 40 days, it was felt that you're cured from the plague and you could come out from quarantine.
It's also the same gematria. No, it's,
Maisie,
no, it's
if
not.
we didn't have this coronavirus, I wouldn't have known that.
I mean, so Rabbi Wahlberg talked about the rebirth piece. It says that according to the Talmud, the fetus is only formed on the 40th
Ah,
day. So
good.
that's like that seems like that's all connected.
Works right into it. That's the 40.
Good. I have
All right,
yeah.
go for it, Rabbi Yoga.
Yeah, so I have a question for both rabbis.
Yes.
I've been thinking these questions for a while, so now it's my chance to ask them in front of everybody. All right, my first question is for our senior rabbi, Amara Da'atra, Rabbi Wahlberg. And this is just something I've been thinking about, and I'm sure you have a funny answer to this. So what was the most embarrassing moment of your whole rabbinic career?
Relive. Think back to the worst moment.
I didn't say worst. I didn't say worst. Just kind of like,
Well, one of the most embarrassing, Helen Gordon can tell you, at a wedding of one of her children, I made comments under the chuppah, not knowing that it was on a microphone that was being recorded. And some of the comments we might say was not appropriate. But early on,
Whoa. Slow down. Hold on 1 second here. Whoa.
yes. I think I called somebody's dress a schmata. That was one of the things that I can repeat publicly. Okay. Early on in the rabbinate, when I was a rabbi in New Bedford, Massachusetts, I announced that the bar mitzvah, that the kiddush was going to take place in the men's room. That somehow evoked some sort of laughter within the congregation. Other than that, I've had a pretty good run.
so I had a follow-up question to that. And so what was like one of the more difficult decisions you had to make as a rabbi? Now that I'm an up-and-coming rabbi, there's big decisions you make. What's something like that was a difficult decision for you in your career, looking back?
Every time I'm dealing with a family up until this day where there's an end of life issue, it's very difficult for me. And that's to this day. Some of it is difficult because I don't want to be the one who decides who shall live and who shall die. Some of it is difficult because my personal feelings and the feelings of halacha are not always the same. And that puts me in a very, very tough position. Halacha tries to hold out as much as possible. But I see somebody suffering in bed who hasn't had a lucid moment in years. And I don't see why I should explain to the family why they should do everything to keep this person living when he doesn't want to live anymore. So I'm conflicted there on a personal and rabbinic level. And I don't want to cross a line which isn't appropriate for me as the rabbi. When I was here 25 years, that might have been before your bar mitzvah. I'm not 100% sure. But when I was here 25 years, Spotlight honored me, and we had Yitzhak Perlman, and it was a love fest. And then that summer, I was walking on the boardwalk in Ocean City with my brothers, and I said, these people at Bethel, they really love me. I can get anything from them. What should I ask?
And it was then and there that you said, bring Rabbi Posner in another.
No, it was
15.
then and there that I said, I'm asking for a big raise. And then I made the big decision that I was going to ask the synagogue to put in a mechitza. Now, nobody was asking for it. And I knew that could be a very, very explosive issue. Other synagogues have really caused rifts and separations because of it. But the synagogue responded very positively, and I felt it was absolutely necessary for the future of the congregation. That kind of a congregation, separate seating, no mechitza, that wasn't working for anybody. That wasn't being fully modern. That wasn't being fully Orthodox.
And then they didn't give you your raise? Was that...
No, I first asked for the raise.
Okay.
First asked for the raise. But putting in the mechitza, I felt we were raising our own children not to come to Beth Tefillah. It was as simple as that. And there were also things that I wanted to do in terms of women, in terms of giving them a more public role that I couldn't do because everybody would then, because not everybody, but people would say, the shul's turning conservative. But if we put in a mechitza, nobody would say that the shul is turning conservative. And so we put in the mechitza and we gave more roles for women in the congregation. We became more modern and more Orthodox. And you want to know something? What we did was featured on the front page of the Christian Science Monitor.
Then you know you made it.
That we were able to improve the traditional part and able to improve the modern part. And there was a picture of the mechitza with Eve Steinberg standing next to it. How did she get into the picture?
You know what happened? She pushed Rabbi Yogev out. He was.
Yeah, Yogev gets on the front cover. She gets on the Christian Science Monitor. What am I, Lakshan?
Rabbi, you've had such a difficult rabbinate with absolutely no. Unbelievable.
I don't wish it on my biggest enemy.
Wait, all right, we have to pause for a moment because we said we're gonna answer questions as they came in. So first of all, there was someone wants to know if the shmata was Helen's dress. So I don't know if you want to answer that or not. What's that?
It was not.
It was not. It wasn't.
It was your machatenister.
I'm trying to spotlight someone else.
I'm telling you, what I said about the dress was nothing compared to some of the other comments.
All right, and now another question that came in was, if there wasn't any religion in the world, do you think there would be more peace and less hatred, or how would things be different? Who wants to take that one? Rabbi Yogev, go ahead. It's all yours. You got your crystal ball?
Yeah. I think religion has potential to bring immense peace and immense hatred. I think we're heading in the right direction with religion now. And I think I think religion is needed for peace if it's done the right way. And I feel like the world's going in the right direction with that. So I would say without religion, I think you need religion for peace. And I pray that it's going to keep going the way it is and it'll bring even more peace to the world. I think religion can be extremely strong. I mean, sometimes when the religious leaders speak among each other, that can bring their followers to connect with each other. There's a lot of potential there. Sometimes politicians, they can't bring the peace even that religious leaders can bring. So I think there's a lot of potential for peace that can be brought about through religion.
All right.
You know who felt the way that is described in this question? John Lennon. His famous song, Imagine. Imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try, no hell below us, above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries, it isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. That's exactly what the Tower of Babel was. All the people are going to be as one. That's also what communism is. And that doesn't lead to peace.
I think people naturally, we know the uniformity doesn't work and people naturally break off into different groups anyways.
At least religion gives roots, a foundation on which to operate, on which to discuss what's right and what's wrong.
Thanks to Robert Cohen for that question that came in. All right, Rabbi Yogev, you have a question for me, and then I'm going to ask the rabbis.
Okay. My question for you, Rabbi Posner, is where do you're starting already to kind of think about the future of Beth Tefillah, and as somebody who's kind of like come in toward the end and seeing all that Rabbi Wahlberg did and all the growth here and the amazing things, like what are you thinking? Where do you see your Beth Tefillah in 10 years from now, in terms of your vision and how it would look on the ground? Some of the positive things you're in, like 3 minutes. No, it's Jake.
In 2.5 minutes, where's Beth Tefillah going to be in 10 years? It's interesting. I think the world in general, I think that this pandemic sped up the trends that were already happening. It sped things up 10, 15 years, maybe. Like virtual education was already happening, but like not to the extent that it sped it up now, right? And people's comfort with, and like online shopping was already happening, but like the grocery shopping was only kind of happening. And this, like, now it's like big time. And it really, I think it sort of sped things up like that. And I think that in a sense, that's a little bit sort of what it's kind of doing for us. Look, I think that it'll take probably a couple of years until people get back to normal and to regular. And then we look at what things will look like after that. But some of for me, the high holiday experience this year was like a bit of a sense of what the future is. Not, God forbid, that should be Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur at all. But in the way of like, what we really, I think, need to be doing now is finding even more like access points and entry points for people into shuls and to be connected. And, we, with Rabbi Wahlberg, with Dr. Shore, like Beth Tefillah has, in my opinion, reached like the height of the big things. I really mean that. Meaning, like, what do you want to do? Like, we should have another lecture series that brings in bigger speakers than Barry Weiss. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're there already. Like, that's happened, the piece that I think that the next generation sort of looks for is they're a little bit less interested in that, like, really big. And they're more interested. Everybody wants personal attention and personal outreach, and figuring out how to like switch to that. So I think this forced it a little bit. We did things for the high holiday experience that were great that we just would have never done in a normal year. Like a drive-by with people coming by. Now you say, okay, it's not necessary because people can come to shul. But you know, people come to shul, and when there's 1,600 people in shul, not everyone gets to get over to the rabbi and say Shana Tova, right? Like that was a nice piece. Or people who have been connected through Zoom and been able to take part in programs who otherwise wouldn't have been able to take part in programs, or some of the education that we did, some of the ways we mentioned Helen before, and we had unveiling for Jerry this past Sunday, and the rains held off for us, and Jerry was a great guy. A couple, Helen's granddaughters, one of her granddaughters who lives in New Jersey, said that it was great for them. They got to celebrate Rosh Hashanah with Beth Tefillah because Helen forwarded along to them. By the way, Helen, we have to talk about that because I'm not sure they paid the fee, and I don't know if you asked permission. I'm just kidding. It's okay. But it was great. They said they got to hear our sermons and connect with us, you know, over in New Jersey over Rosh Hashanah. So like those kinds of pieces and that kind of connection, I think is very, very much, you know, direction things are going in. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with sermons, because the younger generation's attention span just lapped.
The length of a TikTok. That's kind of where it is.
Just lapsed from this. And that's very, very interesting. It'll be a very interesting study to look at the sermons. I think that this happened from Rabbi Rosenblatt to Rabbi Wahlberg. And the question is like, what will happen past that? I know people share stories like they would, what people were in awe of Rabbi Rosenblatt's sermons was like that he could lose them within, you know, a minute in already. Like they had no clue what was going because it was such a, but people liked that. They wanted a rabbi who gave a sermon like that at that time, right? And then obviously, you know, that changed. So
with regards to davening, do you see davening being different in terms of, I guess, like singing or?
You know, it looks like it'd be very interesting to see after COVID what happens. Things, you know, very much in our show, and the Chazan started to move toward this very much. Look, you look at the Ne'ilah service at what the Ne'ilah used to be and what the Ne'ilah became, and there's definitely been a move toward more congregational singing, participation. I imagine that right now, we're not there. Right now, you want the Chazan to stand as far away from you as possible and sing by himself, right? But once we come back from this, I imagine that things will continue to go in that direction. The funniest piece of all of this, and we've talked about this a little bit when thinking about Centennial, I don't know if you'll know about this, but one of the things we've talked about, you know, wish lists are ways to make the main sanctuary more intimate. And it's just a great irony. You know, we were talking 9 months ago about making the main sanctuary more intimate, and now we want to make the main sanctuary as the opposite of intimate as possible. You sit all the way over there, and I'll sit all the way over there. But I imagine that there will come a time, not too far off, where we'll get back to wanting things to be.
Remember, like we said last summer, we had
what's that?
Up close and personal was like the theme of last summer.
Right, exactly.
And now it's like far back and socially distanced.
Exactly.
In 10 years, the main issue that will be discussed at Beth Tefillah is how are we going to get that old rabbi out of his office already? That's what I anticipate will be the talk of the town. In 10 years, synagogues are going to have to be more intimate.
Rabbi, you don't have to worry about that. You can stay in my office as long as you want.
Thank you very much. No, they're going to put me in the sisterhood gift shop. I know it. Yes. I know what to look forward to.
They're gonna make you hold the pulpit power books.
Rabbi Posner, you're 100% correct on what I think to anticipate for the next 10 years. The success of Chabad is intimacy, personal relationship, not overcharging, being able to be there for you. The attraction of synagogues used to be, if you want to have your kids bar and bat mitzvah here, you have to send them to the Hebrew school. And if you want to send them to the Hebrew school, you have to be a member. So you knew you had that family for, let's say, 8 years. And then the challenge was to keep them afterwards. Now, who wants to go to Hebrew school? To have a bar mitzvah, you can have a bracha transliterated and do it at Woodholm. So why join the congregation? That's going to have to change for conservative reform, and it has to change within the framework of a large synagogue like ours. Nobody's building another large synagogue. The next very large synagogue to be built is the Beis Hamikdash.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. You always bring it back to Mashiach. It's unbelievable.
Which means that we're starting a building drive that I wanted to mention this evening. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, listen, we're really sort of running out of time. So let me ask my Ask the Rabbi session. I'm going to ask it quickly. And if you guys have a quick answer, that'll be great. Here's my question for both of you. So we're dealing with questions. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. Okay. And then we'll get to our video. Yeah, we're almost out of time. Wow. This really ran. Okay. We went through the I guess that's what happens when rabbis ask rabbis questions. We had talked about it before. We said 3 minutes per answer, 2 questions each, 6 minutes. All right, we're moving along. So here's my question: what is the most either outrageous or difficult question that you've received as a rabbi, and what was your answer? Same question for Rabbi Wahlberg and Rabbi Yogev, and whoever wants to start is welcome to. Rabbi Wahlberg already kind of answered that question about the end of life questions, which I agree with.
Well, the most outrageous already took place like 10, 15 years ago when a woman called me up and said, she's expecting a baby in June, and she wanted to know if the baby is going to be considered Jewish. And I said, "Are you Jewish?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "But I'm not the birth mother. They took something from my womb and something from and they put it in a petri dish." And I said, "You did what?" I said, "I grew up in Brooklyn. We do things completely different than that." That was the most outrageous.
Awesome. Rabbi Yogev, outrageous or interesting or difficult?
I have like a funny question I was asked. It was funny, but it was startling in the moment. So when I first came to the shul, it was kind of like overwhelming because everybody seemed to have a granddaughter who was like perfect for me. You have to meet my granddaughter. That was like the theme of the first month. So it was like literally probably my first like unveiling ever. Right? It was like, I think it was my first funeral, one of my first funerals ever. And like this older woman from our community, I don't know. We were at the procession and I was leading. I was kind of like nervous, trying to figure out what I'm doing. And I did the prayer. I put my pure intention into the Kel Maleh, and then we were done the procession. And like no more than 5 seconds, maybe 7 seconds after the completion, everyone's like letting things settle in. All of a sudden, I see somebody walk from the other side of the grave, step over the grave, go, "Rabbi, are you married?" I was like, she's like, "I have someone perfect." I was like, "Listen," and it was like, she was like maybe like the aunt or like, I don't know, maybe even married, I don't know. So I said, "Wait, listen, let's do with that in a little bit." And that was like one of my first funerals. So that was like just like a crazy experience.
It wasn't the wife of the person who passed away, I hope.
No, it's just like so shocking that like she stepped over, and then I was like, let's wait till we get outside and then we can talk about it. So that was just like funny.
That's great. That it reminds me what one of my answers to this question was. It was my first year of rabbinical school. No, my second year of rabbinical school, and I went to fill in for a friend of mine who was a rabbi in like a very small sort of Midwestern town for the last days of Sukkot. He couldn't be there. And like I drove there and walked in, and the secretary says, "Oh, are you the rabbi?" And I said, like, "Well, I'm not the rabbi. I'm a rabbinical student." She says, "No, but you're the rabbi." We have someone on the phone and they have a question for you. And I started freaking out, like, what kind of question are they going to ask me? I was like in the middle of taking my tests on all this stuff. Well, it was Sukkot, and they're going to ask me a question about the schach. So I was like, I don't know if I'll know the answer, but okay. So I get on the phone. Yes, I'm the rabbi. And the lady says, you know the holiday when they do all the dancing with the Torah? When is that holiday going to be? Is it Thursday or Friday? I said, I got this one. I can answer this. I know the answer.
In 10 seconds, that reminds me of the kind of my expectations when I first came to the community. I thought I'd be getting most of my questions, like all those texts that we learned in all of our years. The most questions I get on a singular topic is on my veganism. Like, what do you eat? That's like the question that I get the most.
Absolutely. So
can I interject something over here? All of you see, a certain sense of joy that your three rabbis have. There is a sense of joy in the three of us working together, and with Rabbi Wecker and the cantor. I mean, it is a wonderful relationship. But not every rabbi has the sense of joy that we have, and that's because of you. I don't know how it worked out, but this is among the nicest group of people any rabbi could ever have. A lot of rabbis complain that they're treated like an employer-employee. Nobody has ever spoken to any of us like that. I've never been spoken to disrespectfully. And that doesn't sound like hoo-ha. Not too many rabbis can say that. So you just have to know it takes two to tango. And it seems to be working. It seems to be working very well. And we have a lot to show for it. Before we go anyplace, just let's tell everybody what we have planned for the next couple of weeks for MeZOOMin.
Yeah, so we'll get to that in very shortly. I only have to disagree slightly with Rabbi Wahlberg. It's true that it's because of the congregants, but there's absolutely no question that there's a tone that's been set by a rabbi who's been here for the last 40 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful for this. I've felt this way since the moment I stepped foot here. The joy and the jokes and the fun and the smiling and all of that, Rabbi Wahlberg, you set the tone for that here. Mm-hmm. And it's been one of the maybe perk number one of working here has been that. And it's not, being a rabbi is a serious thing, and it could weigh on you, and you can feel it and feel the burden and all that. But you walk into a staff meeting with Rabbi Wahlberg and you smile and you feel good about things.
You just remember that in 10 years when you have the maintenance men carry me out of my office, Rabbi Posner. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So before we talk about next week and we answer our trivia question, I know the time's running late, but this coming Shabbat is Parshat Lech Lecha. Parshat Lech Lecha, which speaks about going to the land of Israel every year, is the Lone Soldier Shabbat, sponsored by the FIDF, the Friends of IDF. Over the past 20 years, there have been 70 men and women from Baltimore who served as lone soldiers in the IDF. And we currently have about 12 young men and women who are serving in the IDF. So we wanted to share, usually we'll speak about it over Shabbat, but we thought that MeZOOMin would be a good opportunity to reach more people here. And many of the 70 who we talked about have Beth Tefillah connections. And by the way, we're also very proud. I know the K's are on. Tali Barron, that's the K's granddaughter, who's celebrating her bat mitzvah a week from Sunday. For her bat mitzvah project, has been raising money for the FIDF Lone Soldier Program. Basically, so people understand, these are lone soldiers, are men and women from over 60 countries who choose to leave behind their families and the security and the warmth that they had and go to protect and to defend Israel. And they don't always have someone looking out for them. And the FIDF, through their Lone Soldier Program, does that. So we wanted to share a story. It's not too long. It's about 7-8 minutes or so. one of these young men. He didn't attend Beth Tefillah, but his siblings are alum, and his niece and nephew are at Beth Tefillah. His brother Amir was featured in the spring in our Yom Ha'atzmaut program. So we're sharing a video from Daniel Tzemach, who served in the IDF. He lives now in Tel Aviv, and he's currently a reporter actually in Israel for station I-24. And we asked him to share our story. So please listen up and pay attention.
Shalom, Baltimore. In honor of Lone Soldier Shabbat, Parashat Lech Lecha, I want to share with you my experience as a former lone soldier. My name is Daniel Tzemach. I didn't go to Beth Tefillah. I went to Park School of Baltimore and Krieger Schechter Day School. My siblings Amir and Neta both went to Beth Tefillah. My niece Yuval is a current student at Beth Tefillah. I decided to move to Israel many years ago. I moved to Israel in 2014, made Aliyah, and I joined the army during Operation Protective Edge, the 2014 Israel-Gaza war. My brother was a reservist combat soldier in the 2014 Israel-Gaza war, and I made Aliyah towards the end in August of 2014. I joined the army in December, the following December, and I was not a combat soldier. I drafted into the IDF spokesperson's unit, where I served as the social media manager of the IDF for 2 years. I managed the content in English, in French, in Spanish, for all different social media platforms during what was known at the time of 2015 as the Knife Intifada, a very difficult period after the 2014 war and the Operation Protective Edge. And it was a very exciting experience, but I guess a little bit of background of why I even made the decision. As a American Israeli, I was born an Israeli citizen. I was born to Israeli parents. I lived in what maybe I could describe as an Israeli home in many aspects. I felt as though I was coming back home. I felt that Israel was my home, and as an Israeli citizen, I felt obligated to serve, as is the mandatory requirement for any Israeli citizen, to sort of devote some sort of national service to the state of Israel. And so for me, it was always important from a young age to do that. After I finished my studies at the University of Rochester, I went forward with that step in my life, and today I'm very happy that I did it. It was a very meaningful experience for me, both from the standpoint of being and feeling Israeli growing up, but also from a Zionist standpoint. I feel as though a very important thing to do, especially if you want to live in Israel, and it's something that can also help you become more acclimated to Israeli society and become an active member of Israeli society. And that's where I am today, years after my IDF service. I am now working in media. I work for a news channel called I-24 News. I function there as the military or defense correspondent. I've been doing that for 2 years. After I finished my service in the IDF and the spokesperson's unit, I wanted to continue doing something that was related to the field of defense and security, and ultimately I found myself at a news channel as a producer. And after a little bit less than a year, I made the step to become a field reporter, covering mainly security issues, spending a lot of time on the Israel-Gaza border, a lot of time in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, and throughout the country, covering terror attacks, covering police activity, and as of late, of course, also covering the COVID-19 pandemic. And I guess just to give a little sense of what FIDF really was for me and how it affected me, and what sort of role it played in my life here in Israel, both as a lone soldier and as what many people call a new immigrant. Not so new anymore. I've been here for 6 years, including my military service. But FIDF for me, also before my service, always had a very positive sort of vision of what this organization was And as a soldier, I can only remember positive sort of associations, positive experiences with FIDF, whether it was a message that I received randomly saying that FIDF supports lone soldiers, to actual events that FIDF organized, or donations that FIDF actually brought to Israel, where some of my friends who I moved to Israel with, doing a program called Green Sabar. It was a program that facilitated my move to Israel, my aliyah, and my drafting into the army. A lot of my friends were, of course, combat soldiers, and they were really thankful to the support that they got from the FIDF and other Zionist pro-Israeli organizations that were very active in supporting them throughout their time in the military. And it's certainly a very, very, very valuable and meaningful role played by this organization, one that really carries soldiers through very difficult periods of time, which really brings me, I guess, to where we all are now, which is, of course, in the heart of this COVID-19 pandemic. And as an Israeli soldier, as a lone soldier especially, it is a very difficult period. Many soldiers today have limited time to leave their military bases. They're staying at times for months on end, given limitations on exits to go home. Whether you're a lone soldier or a soldier who has family in Israel, you're really stuck on base, also because it's been, unfortunately, a fairly active security situation and period overall on Israel's various different borders. And so to that end, it has been, I know also from cousins of mine that serve in the military, a difficult period for them, having to really stay on base for so long, not being able to see their families because of the health ministry restrictions and because of the restrictions the Israeli military also imposes. So now, not more than ever, but certainly given the extreme circumstances, it is absolutely important to continue to support and show the generosity that the FIDF and other Jewish and Zionist organizations throughout the United States have shown to Americans and other Jews that moved to Israel, that made Aliyah, took the step, drafted into the military, serving in combat roles, defending Israel's borders, something that I've seen both as a soldier and also now as a military correspondent. There is no question that the role is so important of these lone soldiers, and how appreciated they are by Israeli society. Of course, when you join the army, you're surrounded by 18-year-old Israelis, and if you finished your studies in university like I did and like some of my friends did, you know, they may laugh at you and say, why'd you come to Israel at age 22 to do things that 18-year-old Israelis may not want to do? But ultimately, you come to realize that those same people appreciate what you're doing so much, because you really go through the hardships of basic training, and any hardships that any soldier or anybody goes through. It really it shines quite brightly how important this sort of contribution is, especially for those men and women that go to the front lines, female combat soldiers, male combat soldiers. I've met both who made Aliyah from the US. And it's definitely, there's no question that there is an appreciation also in Israel for making that step and taking that stride. And that's something that can definitely help you when times seem tough. And another thing that helps is just knowing that people in the United States, in your hometown, a very supportive one like mine in Baltimore, I've never felt anything but respect and appreciation from my family, my friends, and my loved ones that are still over there in Baltimore. And to that I say Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for your time, and keep supporting the lone soldiers. They need it. Thanks so much.
Awesome. So thank you so much to Daniel. And I know Rayut Friedman is on here, the director here of FIDF. So thank you to Rayut for everything that you do. We're incredibly proud. One of the things we're most proud of at BT is the way that our people are connected with these organizations, incredible organizations doing incredible work. And we're incredibly proud of our alumni who have served and who continue to serve. So thank you for all joining us. Before we sign off, we're going to answer our trivia question in a moment. I want to also remind everyone that next week in this same slot on this same link, this same Zoom link, we will have Rabbi Shmuley Botach will be speaking about the disappearing American Jew. I'll be in dialogue with him, speaking about some of the things that we talked about this evening and getting his take on it. That's part of BTU, Bettsville University, with a program that's made possible by a grant from the Russell family and the Ronnie H. and Allie Russell Charitable Foundation. So thanks very much to them for their sponsorship. Rabbi, thanks everyone for an incredible evening. And Rabbi Yogev, can you please tell us finally what the answer is to our trivia question today?
This is the moment you've been waiting for. The answer is Am Yisrael is described as sand, stars, and dust. They'll be innumerable. You can't count them, to the point that there's so many Jews and so much offspring. They'll be compared to sand, stars, and dust, but not earth. I think there's a nice message connected to those other three, is that there's so many grains of sand, so many stars in the sky and on the seashore, but we count them all as one unit. And I think that's something special to think about, that there's so many opinions, there's so many approaches amongst us all, but it's a huge mitzvah to try to stay united, to try to stay connected, and to foster unity, especially in these times. So that's something to think about going forward.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us this evening. And we'll see you next week, if not before. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.